All right, hello everyone. Hello. Doing sort of I wouldn't call it a lazy stream, but a non-GamerGate stream, non-Sweet Baby Inc. stream, a January 6th research stream. It's been a long time since I've done a research stream, and this is my first time doing one on January 6th, and hopefully I'll do more to come. I'm not sure how interesting the content is. I think it'll be pretty interesting to explore and to have like a serious go through of the materials live. Um, So my process currently, and I did some research off air a little bit, um, basically just going through some of the January 6th report first. That's where I'm starting with my research on this. And so most of this is just taken right from the January 6th report. I've been going through taking important notes of things that I thought were important. So the members of the board of the members of the committee that investigated this were Benny G. Thompson, Liz Cheney, Zoe Lofgren, Adam Schiff, Pete Aguilar, Stephanie M. Murphy, Jamie Raskin, Elaine Luria, and Adam Kinzinger. Now, two of them are Republicans, the rest are Democrats, and it looks like why that is that Pelosi had asked McCarthy to send 5 additional Republican members to the commission, and McCarthy did send 5. Pelosi accepted 3 of them, but asked that they send back Jim Jordan and Jim Banks. McCarthy refused, and then he withdrew all 5 nominees. So I looked into why Jim Jordan and Jim Banks were removed. It looks like Jim Jordan was removed for being a material witness in the investigation. He had said in December 2020 that there was, quote, no way, quote unquote, Trump should concede to Biden even after the Electoral College certified Biden's victory. Jordan also participated in a White House meeting where Republican lawmakers met with Trump's team to discuss using the January 6th joint congressional session to challenge his electoral defeat. Jordan repeatedly publicly questioned the results of the election, arguing on the congressional floor on January 6th that, quote, Americans know that there was something wrong with this election. During the campaign, Vice President Biden would do an event and he'd get 50 people at the event. President Trump, at just one rally, gets 50,000 people. Jordan also said that the Select Committee was a politically motivated effort to harm Trump and even referred to it as impeachment round 3. Okay, so that's why Jim Jordan looks like wasn't on the committee. As for Banks, Jim Banks had publicly undermined confidence in the committee upon being submitted for appointment by McCarthy, saying it existed, quote, solely to malign conservatives and justify the left's authoritarian agenda. And in December 2020, Banks said he had questions about, quote, about the legality of some votes cast in the 2020 election, unquote. Okay, so, and then also the Republican vice chair of the committee, Liz Cheney, did defend the decision to not seat these 2 particular members. So that seems fine to me. Then I went through the executive summary. Again, most of this just copied straight from there, and I'll be going through more of it. And then Trump's victory declaration. I'm just trying to get everybody caught up if you're watching. So this is the research I've done off air and off stream. Not sure we should go through the Well, it could be useful to go through the executive summary. So let's just do it. I'm not going to be reading the entire document, so don't expect that. All right. Executive summary. Beginning election night. Actually, we just go through the. I can pull it up on the. So this is the executive summary of the findings of the committee's findings on January 6th. 1. Beginning election night and continuing through January 6th and thereafter, Donald Trump purposely disseminated false allegations of fraud relating to the 2020 presidential election in order to aid his effort to overturn the election and for purposes of soliciting contributions. These false claims provoked his supporters to violence on January 6th. Knowing that he and his supporters had lost dozens of election lawsuits and despite his own senior advisors refuting his election fraud claims and urging him to concede his election loss, Donald Trump refused to accept the lawful result of the 2020 election, rather than honor his constitutional obligation to, quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed, unquote. President Trump instead plotted to overturn the election outcome. Despite knowing that such an action would be illegal and that no state had or would submit an altered electoral slate, Donald Trump corruptly pressured Vice President Mike Pence to refuse to count electoral votes during Congress's joint session on January 6th. 4. Donald Trump sought to corrupt the U.S. Department of Justice by attempting to enlist department officials to make purposely false statements and thereby aid his efforts to overturn the presidential election. After that effort failed, Donald Trump offered the position of acting attorney general to Jeff Clark, knowing that Jeff Clark intended to disseminate false information aimed at overturning the election. Number 5, without any evidentiary basis and contrary to state and federal law, Donald Trump unlawfully pressured state officials and legislators to change the results of the election in their states. 6. Donald Trump oversaw an effort to obtain and transmit false electoral certificates to Congress and the National Archives. 7. Donald Trump pressured members of Congress to object to valid states of electors from several states. 8. Donald Trump purposely verified false information filed in a federal court. 9. Based on false allegations that the election was stolen, Donald Trump summoned tens of thousands of supporters to Washington for January 6th. Although these supporters were angry and some were armed, Donald Trump instructed them to march to the Capitol on January 6th to, quote, take back, unquote, their country. 10. Knowing that a violent attack on the Capitol was underway and knowing that his words would incite further violence, Donald Trump purposely sent a social media message condemning Vice President Pence at 2:24 p.m. on January 6th. 11. Knowing that violence was underway at the Capitol and despite his duty to ensure that the laws are faithfully executed, Donald Trump refused repeated requests over a multiple hour period that he instruct his violent supporters to disperse and leave the Capitol, and instead watch the violent attack unfold on television. This failure to act perpetuated the violence at the Capitol and obstructed Congress's proceedings to count electoral votes. 12. Each of these actions by Donald Trump was taken in support of a multi-party conspiracy to overturn the lawful results of the 2020 presidential election. 13. The intelligence community and law enforcement agencies did successfully detect the planning for potential violence on January 6th, including planning specifically by the Proud Boys and Oath Keeper militia groups who ultimately led the attack on the Capitol. As January 6th approached, the intelligence specifically identified the potential for violence at the U.S. Capitol. This intelligence was shared within the executive branch, including with the Secret Service and the President's National Security Council. 14. Intelligence gathered in advance of January 6th did not support a conclusion that Antifa or other left-wing groups would likely engage in a violent counter-demonstration or attack Trump supporters on January 6th. Indeed, intelligence from January 5th indicated that some left-wing groups were instructing their members to, quote, stay at home, unquote, and not attend on January 6th. Ultimately, none of these groups was involved to any material extent with the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. 15. Neither the intelligence community nor law enforcement obtained intelligence in advance of January 6th on the full extent of the ongoing planning by President Trump, John Eastman, Rudolph Giuliani, and their associates to overturn the certified election results. Such agencies apparently did not, and potentially could not, anticipate the provocation President Trump would offer the crowd in his ellipse speech. That President Trump would, quote, spontaneously, unquote, instruct the crowd to march to the Capitol, that President Trump would exacerbate the violent riot, by sending his 2:24 p.m. tweet condemning Vice President Pence, or the full scale of the violence and lawlessness that would ensue. Nor did law enforcement anticipate that President Trump would refuse to direct his supporters to leave the Capitol once violence began. No intelligence community advanced analysis predicted exactly how President Trump would behave. No such analysis recognized the full scale and extent of the threat to the Capitol on January 6th. 16. Hundreds of Capitol and D.C. Metropolitan Police officers performed their duties bravely on January 6th, and America owes those individuals immense gratitude for their courage in the defense of Congress and our Constitution. Without their bravery, January 6th would have been far worse. Although certain members of the Capitol Police leadership regarded their approach to January 6th as, quote, all hands on deck, unquote, the Capitol Police leadership did not have sufficient assets in place to address the violent and lawless crowd. Capitol Police leadership did not anticipate the scale of the violence that would ensue after President Trump instructed tens of thousands of his supporters in the Ellipse crowd to march to the Capitol and then tweeted at 2:24 p.m. Although Chief Stephen Sund raised the idea of National Guard support and the Capitol Police Board did not request Guard assistance prior to January 6th, the Metropolitan Police took an even more proactive approach to January 6th and deployed roughly 800 officers, including responding to emergency calls for help at the Capitol. Rioters still managed to break their line in certain locations when the crowd surged forward in the immediate aftermath of Donald Trump's 2:24 p.m. tweet. The Department of Justice readied a group of federal agents at Quantico and in the District of Columbia, anticipating that January 6th could become violent, and then deployed those agents once it became clear that police at the Capitol were overwhelmed. Agents at the Department of Homeland Security were also deployed to assist. President Trump had authority and responsibility to deploy the National Guard in the District of Columbia, but never gave any order to deploy the National Guard on January 6th or on any other day, nor did he instruct any federal law enforcement agency to assist. Because the authority to deploy the National Guard had been delegated to the Department of Defense, the Secretary of Defense could and ultimately did deploy the National Guard. Although evidence identifies a likely miscommunication between members of the civilian leadership in the Department of Defense and impacting the timing of deployment, the committee has found no evidence that the Department of Defense intentionally delayed deployment of the National Guard. The Select Committee recognizes that some at the department had genuine concerns, counseling caution that President Trump might give an illegal order to use the military in support of his efforts to overturn the election. All right, so that's the executive summary. And I've gone a little bit beyond that in my research already. We'll switch back to that. Basically, again, I'm just trying to copy the important highlights that I find here. So everything is inside the J6 report in the description of the video. And call-ins are open, by the way. So if you want to join, yell at me in the chat and then jump into the waiting room. All right. So then it goes on for a few pages about the Trump's victory declaration. So it's going through the executive summary in greater detail before going through the full report, which we're going to go through slowly over time, over the course of, not tonight, over the course of probably months, or yeah, probably months. All right. Trump's victory declaration, again, taken from the report. So I did not write this. I just took out the parts that I thought were the most relevant. Trump's campaign manager and other Bill Stepien and other campaign officials warned Trump that mail-in ballots could result in a quote red mirage unquote on election night, as in-person votes were counted before mail-in votes. Trump's White House counselor Hope Hicks testified that Trump understood that many people vote by mail. They have for a long time and it has worked fine. Republican House Leader Kevin McCarthy and his son-in-law Jared Kushner both urged Trump to encourage mail-in voting. From the report, Donald Trump won in numerous states that allowed no excuse absentee voting in 2020, including Alaska, Florida, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Montana, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Trump campaign manager Bill Stepien and other campaign experts advised Trump that the election results would not be known for some time and that he could not truthfully declare victory. Stepien said, quote, "It was far too early to be making any calls like that. Ballots were still being counted. Ballots were still going to be counted for days." Trump campaign senior advisor Jason Miller testified that he had warned Trump that he could not declare victory because it was too early to say who had won. Despite knowing that it was too early to declare victory, Trump falsely declared on election night that, quote, "This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election. We want all voting to stop." The next day, on November 5th, he tweeted, quote, "Stop the count," unquote. Stopping the count would violate state and federal law. The only Trump campaign advisor to support Trump's decision to declare victory while the votes were still being counted was Rudy Giuliani, who was reportedly inebriated at the time. That is from the report. Right out of the box on election night, President claimed that there was major fraud underway. I mean, this happened as far as I could tell before there was any actual. Sorry, hang on one second. I mean, this happened as far as I can tell before there was actually any potential of looking at evidence. He claimed there was major fraud, and it seemed to be based on the dynamic that at the end of the evening, a lot of the Democratic votes came in, which changed the vote count in certain states. And that seemed to be the basis for this broad claim that there was major fraud. And I didn't think much of that because people had been talking for weeks and everyone understood for weeks that this was what was going to be happening on election night. That's Attorney General Bill Barr. Tom Fitton was in direct communication with President Trump from October 31st to November 3rd, 2020, and that Trump would falsely declare victory on election night. And said that, sorry, hang on, let me reread this. Tom Fitton was in direct communication with President Trump from October 31st to November 3rd, and that, yeah, I transcribed some of it a little bit, some errors. What was the exact quote? I think that's my writing before we get to the quotes, but that's Tom. Here, we'll just do the. Okay. President Trump's decision to declare victory falsely on election night and unlawfully to call for the vote counting to stop was not a spontaneous decision, it was premeditated. The committee has assembled a range of evidence of President Trump's pre-planning for a false declaration of victory. This includes multiple written communications on October 31st and November 3rd to the White House by Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. This evidence demonstrates that Fitton was in direct contact with President Trump and understood that President Trump would falsely declare victory on election night and call for the vote counting to stop. The evidence also included an audio recording of President Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon, who said this on October 31st, 2020, to a group of his associates from China. Quote, "And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's just going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's a winner. He's just going to say he's a winner. The Democrats, more of our people, vote early that count. Theirs vote in mail. So they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of that. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. Also, if Trump if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. No, because he's going to sit right there and say, they stole it. I'm directing the Attorney General to shut down all ballot places in all 50 states. It's going to be, no, he's going to go, he's not going out easy. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit. Also, in advance of the election, Roger Stone, another outside advisor to President Trump, made this statement: I really do suspect it will still be up in the air. When that happens, the key thing to do is claim victory. Possession is 9/10 of the law. No, we won. Fuck you. Sorry. Over. We won. You're wrong. Fuck you. So I just want to make sure I transcribe that thing earlier right in the document. Testified. All right, we're probably just gonna go through this because my headset is the battery's low. I charged it a little bit, but I didn't charge it enough, I guess, after the last stream. Interesting time, just 845 pages. I know, right? It'll be super fast and easy to get through all this. I haven't even started reading today's research yet. I really haven't. I've just been going through what I've already researched, already read, I should say. All right, that's the full Bannon quote, and then outside advice. So yeah, I'm basically just summarizing some of the stuff in this. Outside advice. Have I switched it over? Yeah. Outside advisor to Donald Trump, Roger Stone, said on November 1st that the election would still be undecided on election night, but urged Trump to declare victory anyway in advance of the coming vote. What day was that? This might take a second. We might have to go through. It's not really. I'm not sure it's important to have the date, but I could go get it. Kit Astro says, "Looks like Trump is a con, according to this." Well, I think he's probably an insurrectionist, but I guess we'll see what I think at the end of all my research. But yeah, no, I currently that's my view. — 2001. Oh, this could take a minute. Do they even store this stuff in their repository? All right, now the claim that I'm wanting to verify, or I already, the him I want to verify the date on is, oh, that on November 1st. Okay. And then we also had it. Do we have a date for the other one though? Counsel to the Vice President Greg Jacob drafted a memorandum on Election Day, so okay, Election Day, advising Mike Pence against making false statements about the election. This concern was echoed by the Vice President's Chief of Staff, Mark Short. Cool. Okay, so November 1st is when that I already had it in there. Trump's campaign manager Bill Stepien testified under oath. Committee staff, what was your view on the state of the election at that point? Stepien, very, very, very bleak. We told him, the group that we went over there outlined, myself, sorry, let me reread this. Stepien, very, very, very bleak. We told him, the group that went over there outlined, my belief and chances for success at this point. And then we pegged that at 5, maybe 10% based on recounts that either were automatically initiated or could be initiated based on realistic legal challenges. Not all the legal challenges that eventually were pursued, but it was my belief is that it was a very, very 5 to 10% is not a very good optimistic outlook. Trump's senior campaign advisor Jason Miller testified that Matt Okseki, I'm probably not saying that right, head of the Trump campaign's data team, informed Mr. Trump that he would lose his challenges to the election based on his own campaign team's analysis. Attorney General Bill Barr, tasked by President Trump to investigate Trump's false election claims, testified under oath. Quote, and I repeatedly told the president in no uncertain terms that I did not see evidence of fraud, that would affect the outcome of the election. And frankly, a year and a half later, I haven't seen anything to change my mind on that. Trump campaign lawyer Alex Cannon testified under oath that he had presented his findings to President Trump and the White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows in mid to late November 2020, and that they, quote, weren't finding anything that would be sufficient to change the results in any of the key states, unquote. Yeah, this everyone can have access to this Kid Astro. So it's there's a link in the description. I'll link the other thing too. I'll link the expanded stuff. They're supporting documents as well. So let me update that. Oh, yeah, so this is just more of his testimony, or more snippets of it. but I've already gone over like the gist of it, and now I'm caught up on where I was. So just remember where I left off. I haven't looked at this in weeks, a couple weeks, since before the Lieutenant Sarge conversation. Okay, so I think here's where we're at. President Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien, recalled that President Trump was being told, quote, wild allegations, unquote, and that it was the campaign's job to track the allegations down. Committee staff, you said that you were very confident that you were telling the president the truth in your dealings with him. And had your team been able to verify any of these allegations of fraud, would you have reported those to the president? Stepien, sure. Committee staff, did you ever have to report that? Stepien, one of my frustrations would be, people would throw out, these reports, these allegations, these things that they heard or saw in a state, and they'd tell President Trump, and it would be the campaign's job to track down the information, the facts, and President Trump, I don't like the way this guy talks, Oh well, I'll deal with it. If someone's saying, hey, all these votes aren't counted or were misconstrued, if you're down in a state like Arizona, you'd like hearing that. It would be our job to track it down and come up dry because the allegations didn't prove to be true. And we'd have to, relay the news that yeah, that tip that someone told you about those votes or that fraud or came nothing came of it. That would be our job, you know, telling the truth squad, the truth telling squad. And not a fun job to be, much. It's an easier job to be telling the president about, wild allegations. It's a harder job to be telling him on the back end that, yeah, that wasn't true. Committee staff, how did he react to those types of conversations where you told him that an allegation or another wasn't true? Stepien, usually he had pretty clear eyes, like he understood, you know. We told him where we thought the race was, and I think he was pretty realistic with our viewpoint, in agreement with our viewpoint of the forecast, and the uphill climb we thought we had, or we thought he had. Okay, so this is all right. So I'm sure it's not an easy job to be the truth teller to Trump. I'm sure that's 100% true. Um, so what do we want to go back to our document here? And I don't know. I don't know if this is like a good way to do research or not. I'm still new at this, but it seems like a good way to do research. And then if I want to, what I can do is I can make a whole document at some point that's with my own original work, but citing all this stuff. But so right now I'm just going to summarize the Stepien conversation. So Trump, what is he? Campaign manager, Stepien. Yeah. Okay, so here's what I summarize this as. Trump campaign manager Bill Stepien testified that President Trump was being told wild allegations, that his team informed President Trump that the allegations weren't true, and that President Trump appeared to understand they weren't true. If you think I'm mischaracterizing this at any point, obviously call me out. Trump campaign senior advisor Jason Miller told the committee that he informed President Trump, quote, several unquote times that specific to election day fraud and hang on, that quote, specific to election day fraud and irregularities, there were not enough to overturn the election, unquote. All right, more information in the Trump new camp. Actually, we could probably spin this off into a new section. This is the Trump victory. Well, I guess it all speaks to his like mens rea that he knew. So it's still like relevant to the Trump victory declaration. I wonder if they. So Stepien here, not Stepien, Jason Miller, the way he phrased this, specific to election day fraud and irregularities. It might be worth like going through his full interview at some point to see why he phrased things that way, but I don't know. I'm not sure it'll be worth the effort to do that. I'm not because I don't think it's like materially relevant necessarily. If there's other testimonies. Vice President Pence has also said publicly that he told President Trump that there was no basis to allege that the election was stolen. When a reporter recently asked, quote, "Did you ever point blank say to the president that we lost this election?" unquote. Pence responded that I did many times. Pence also explained, quote, "There was never evidence of widespread fraud. I don't believe fraud changed the outcome of the election, but the president and the campaign had every right to have those examined in court. I told the president that once the legal challenges played out, he should simply accept the outcome of the election and move on." The general counsel of President Trump's campaign, Matthew Morgan, informed members of White House staff and likely many others of the campaign's conclusion that none of the allegations of fraud and irregularities could be sufficient to change the outcome of the election. Quote, "What was generally discussed on that topic was whether the fraud, maladministration, abuse, or irregularities, if aggregated and read most favorably to the campaign, would be outcome determinative." And I think everyone's assessment in the room, at least amongst the staff, Mark Short, myself, and Greg Jacob, was that it was not sufficient to be outcome determinative. Okay, so there's some stuff I got to really write down here. This is good. Or well, none of it's good. Like none of this should have happened. but but yeah, it's good research materials, good things to have ready if I ever need it. And hopefully, I think it's important. The reason I want to do the January 6th stuff, it doesn't get as much views as my other content, but the reason I want to do it, I think it's important. I think it's one, I want to understand the topic better myself, and two, with the election coming up, I think this is for me probably this and Ukraine are the two most important issues for me. And most people don't. I guess I don't know about most people, but a lot of people don't seem to have um, gone through. Maybe because it's 800 pages, but they don't know all the details necessarily. All right, so we got Mike Pence's testimony. Well, he didn't testify, he just said, so it's not testified. On several occasions. Or did he say many? Let's go back and see. Many times he did say many. What did he actually say exactly? That they lost. Pence encouraged President Trump to move on after losing the legal battles. He also said, or Pence also said, that there, quote, that quote, there was never evidence of widespread fraud, and that he doesn't believe that fraud changed the outcome of the election. And then we got Matthew Morgan's testimony. General counsel to President Trump's campaign. Testified that himself, Greg Jacob, Mark Short. Testified that the assessment of himself, or let's just do himself last. Greg Jacob, Mark Short, himself, and it's kind of a weasel word, but everyone in the room. Put that in quotes. But that is what he said. Everyone's assessment was that there was no outcome determinative fraud or, well, he actually he gives a lot of it. Fraud, maladministration. I'll just put fraud or maladministration rather than listing everything he says. Oh, well, it's not that long. In a meeting on November 23rd, Barr told President Trump that the Justice Department was doing its duty by investigating every fraud allegation if it's specific, credible, and could have affected the outcome, quote unquote. But that they're just not meritorious. They're not panning out. November 23rd, Bill Barr dropping the hammer. All right. Everybody's dropped the hammer on him. He just doesn't seem to care that his claims don't seem to be true. I think we can actually split this off into a different section. I think that's best. So I want to keep this Trump victory declaration because that's important to know that he planned in advance. But now we're getting into things after the election. So mid to late November 2022 or 2020, that's after the election. Trump's knowledge of defeat. So here's where I want to document claims relating to whether or not Trump knew the election wasn't stolen. Engage his level of knowledge. Barr then told the Associated Press on December 1st that the department had not, quote, not seen fraud on a scale that could have affected a different outcome in the election. Do you know anyone who volunteered for elections? I don't know, not off the top of my head. I know people who have done before, I think, in real life. Um, but in the U.S., elections are handled at the local level. So it's gonna be well, it's handled at the state and local level. So essentially, it's gonna be different in every state, and also there's local volunteers who process things at the local level with state aid. But I've not like asked election workers, though. Like I live in Missouri, so this isn't one of the states where Trump has alleged fraud, to my knowledge. Next, he reiterated his point in private meetings with the president, both that afternoon and on December 14th. Man, it's not looking good. All right, I'm going to open a notepad and just scribble some of this. All right, next, he reiterated this point in private meetings with the president, both that afternoon. So, that afternoon being December 1st. That afternoon. And on December 14th, as well as in his final press conference. Okay, so nothing super new. He did reiterate on 3 additional occasions to President Trump that the election was not stolen from him, though. No, just wondering about the general view amongst those people because they are the ones who would know. Yeah, I mean, you talk to people in your community for sure because you'll find people in every county who volunteer for that. If it's fraud or not, they would know if it's fraud or not. Well, if it happened in their area, they might have information about that would be useful, yeah. These are transcripts of actual evidence, right? Is that how it works? Well, this was a select committee of the House of Representatives that investigated January 6th. It was majority Democrat, 2 Republicans. At the very beginning of the stream, I went over why there weren't more Republicans on the committee, and I thought that it was reasonable because uh, 2 of the people that Kevin McCarthy submitted were rejected. other three others were uh, accepted. And the reason that the two were rejected is because that they, well, one of them was a material witness in the case. Both of them kind of were actually. So one of them was a material witness. The other one publicly questioned the election result and publicly questioned the commission that he himself was being appointed to. Publicly undermined its confidence before even taking a seat. So I think those like reasonable reasons to reject an individual. If Trump became a little bit more moderate, he could have had his wall. Probably. I mean, I don't know if he would have gotten it or not, but at various points he was willing to. Occasionally, it seemed like trying to strike some sort of grand deal, but never materialized. Sometimes his fault, sometimes the Democrats' fault, I'm sure. But right now, I'm just focused on this research, not specific policies. I'll probably go another 20 minutes or so. All right. The Department of Homeland Security had reached a similar determination 2 weeks earlier, stating that, quote, there is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any other way compromised, was in any way compromised. That's 63. So let's see what the hell that quote is from. Oh, did they have it broken down by section? Michael Reed? Who's Michael Reed? Or hang on, it's 62, so it's Zachary Parkinson, actually. Or hang on, I think it is broken down by section. It is, yeah. So that's a different source. Oh boy. All right, so that's 63. Joint statement from Elections Infrastructure Government Coordinating Council and the Election Infrastructure Sector Coordinating Executive Committees. Oh yeah, I remember seeing this at the time actually. Not reading their full statement, I don't think, but reading about it, hearing about it, watching their press conference maybe. Yeah, here it is. Doing good work. Yeah, Control F. Yeah, that's what I ended up having to do. Wait for the PDF to reload. I'm glad some people are enjoying this though. Yeah, if you like the stream and want to see me do more content like this, more boring research, and then in preparation for, I'm actually having a debate slash conversation about January 6th and immigration next month. Yeah, so it'll be in April. I'll be talking with Mr. Shikaki, Lieutenant Sarge, and Xenomancer Craig Mansfeld about J6 and about immigration. So should be a good discussion. I have to do immigration research too, which I probably will at some point prior to then. So thank you. Yes, thanks for liking the stream. We'll probably be shutting it down like 10 minutes or so. You have a 100% like to view ratio. All right, so what I'm going to look for is a specific quote that I just wrote down, and then search for that. Cool. In addition, multiple other high-ranking Justice Department personnel appointed by President Trump also informed him repeatedly that the allegations were false. As January 6th, well, oh, okay, I guess we're gonna get, okay, this we're gonna get to that, okay. Like, name the people, okay. As January 6th drew closer, Acting Attorney General Rosen and Acting Deputy Attorney General Donahue had calls with President Trump on almost a daily basis explaining in detail what the department's investigations showed. Acting Deputy Attorney General Richard Donahue told the Select Committee that he and Attorney General Rosen tried quote to put it in very clear terms to the president. And I said something to the effect of, quote, "Sir, we've done dozens of investigations, hundreds of interviews. The major allegations are not supported by the evidence developed. We've looked in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada. We're doing our job." On December 31st, Donahue recalls telling the president that, quote, "People keep telling you these things and they turn out not to be true," unquote. And on January 3rd, Donahue reiterated this point with the president. Quote, "As in previous conversations," or this is him talking to the committee, not a quote from him to the president, but "as in previous conversations, we would say to him, quote, 'We checked that out and there's nothing to it.'" Okay. So this is good details. So we got the acting attorney general and the deputy attorney general also telling him that the election fraud claims are not true. We get Rosen's name. Jeff Rosen, was it? Or yeah. On an almost daily basis, they informed him that his claims were not true. Okay. Sounds sounds like not something I would not expect really. That's kind of exactly what I expected. Okay, well, they on an almost daily basis detailing their investigations. Oh, there's more I didn't talk. Okay. On December 31st, Donahue told President Trump, people keep telling you these things and they turn out to be true. Iterated to him on January 3rd, checked out fraud claims. In brackets, I'll put that. There's nothing to it. Or well, I'm not quoting him, so I can actually reword it however I want, as long as it's honest. Acting Attorney General Rosen testified before the Select Committee that, quote, the common element, quote, of all his communications with President Trump was President Trump's urging that the department find widespread fraud that did not actually exist. None of the department's investigations identified any genuine fraud sufficient to impact the election outcome. Quote, during my tenure as acting attorney general, which began on December 24th, the Department of Justice maintained the position publicly announced by former Attorney General William Barr that the department had been presented with no evidence of widespread voter fraud in a scale sufficient to change the outcome of the 2020 election. As President Trump was hearing from his campaign and his Justice Department, the allegations of widespread fraud were not supported by evidence. His White House legal staff also reached the same conclusions and agreed specifically with what Barr told President Trump. Both White House counsel Pat Cipollone and White House senior advisor Eric Hirschman reinforced to President Trump that the Justice Department was doing its duty to investigate allegations of voter fraud, of supposed voter fraud. Someone want to write this down here. As President Trump was hearing from his campaign and his Justice Department that the election. Okay, I've already read that. Cipollone told the Select Committee that he, quote, had seen no evidence of massive fraud in the election and that he, quote, forcefully, unquote, made this point over and over again, quote unquote. For example, during a late night group meeting with President Trump on December 18th, at which he and Hirschman urged Trump not to heed the advice of several election conspiracists at the meeting. Cipollone. They didn't think that we were, they didn't think we believed this, that there had been massive fraud in the election. And the reason they didn't think we believed it is because we didn't. Committee staff. And you articulated that forcefully to them during the meeting. Cipollone. I did, yeah. I had seen no evidence of massive fraud in the election. At some point, you have to deliver with the evidence. And again, I just got I just got to go back to what Barr said. He had not seen and I was not aware of any evidence of fraud to the extent that it would change the results of the election. That was made clear to them, okay, over and over again. Similarly, White House attorney Eric Hirschman was also very clear about his views. They never proved the allegations that they were making, and they were trying to develop. In short, President Trump was informed over and over again by his senior appointees, campaign experts, and those who had served him for years that his election fraud allegations were nonsense. How did President Trump continue to make false allegations despite all of this unequivocal information? President Trump sought out those who were not scrupulous with the facts and who were willing to be dishonest. He found a new legal team to assert claims that his existing advisors and the Justice Department had specifically informed him were false. President Trump's new legal team, headed by Rudy Giuliani and their allies, ultimately lost dozens of election lawsuits in federal and state courts. The testimony of Trump campaign manager Bill Stepien helps to put this series of events in perspective. Stepien described his interactions with Giuliani as an intentional self-demotion, quote unquote, with Stepien stepping aside once it became clear that President Trump intended to spread falsehoods. Stepien knew the president's new team was relying on unsupportable accusations, and he refused to be associated with their approach. Then he goes on to say, there were two groups of family. We called them kind of my team and Rudy's team. I don't mind them being characterized. I don't mind being characterized as part of Team Normal, as reporters, kind of started to do around that point. All right, so let's go ahead and document these claims here, and then we'll probably call her a night. Just 16 more sessions. that might be that might be undercounting it. Uh, well, I don't know how much I want to get into the the law enforcement side of things, like them investigating the Capitol Police and the job that they did. Like that's important oversight work that a legislative body should do, of course. And I'm glad they did it, I guess. But I'm not sure that that's going to be like super super important for the election necessarily, unless I'm facing off against like conspiracy people who think that who knows who have specific claims they want to make regarding that. All right. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. Hope you found it at least somewhat informative. I know it's a lot of me just standing there and kind of muttering a little bit as I type out certain things and occasionally read statements out loud, read from the report. So, if you want to check it out, there's the description. Like the video, leave a comment, and definitely check out my other work too. GamerGate book sounds good. Have a good night. I'm getting pretty tired. And we're going to raid somebody. Who are we going to raid? Don't go anywhere just yet. Uh, we'll raid food shop. She should be going live in 7 minutes. So have fun. And oh, it was informative to me how they investigate a former president. I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully, more people find it enjoyable as well. And join the Discord if you haven't already. Take care, everyone.